record. So just take a couple of seconds for the stream to output. It is almost there. It's just about to run. And as soon as it captures, and we're live. We're live, Simon. We're live. Say hello to the big wide world.
Hi everyone. Hi Jonathan. How you doing?
Yeah. All good in the hood, man. All good in the hood. So how was your? You've been out to clap and support the NHS, which is good.
Certainly have been out to clap. The rest of the day's been much like any other last few weeks. Not terribly productive, but it's all good so far.
Yeah. I couldn't leave the desk, so I've recorded it, so I'll send it out later as a sort of like sub-broadcast if people think I'm not actually participating and getting involved.
Yeah.
So obviously people will slowly join in time, but for now, let's talk about what you do and where you started. So I don't know. We know each other. We know what we do, but we don't actually know that much about the exactitude of the workflow or what you do. So just give me a lead into your first job and how you sort of like how you kind of got into it and where you are.
Yeah, now. I mean basically I've been very lucky and very fortunate. I've been sort of in telly for all my life, really, or all my career. Out of university, I started, in a way, started right at the top. Started at BBC News in London, and I started as a video editor, which was always pressured, but great fun. You're the guys slamming it together with minutes to spare. News is a funny beast because it's not always the greatest quality. But as we probably see at the moment, actually that's not the most important thing. It's making sure the information gets out there. But the good thing about working as an editor in news is hopefully you have an idea of actually what you need in terms of trying to put a story, put a sequence together. Anyway, I did that for a number of years. As an editor, as a producer, as a shoot edit at times and things like that. And then after about to be honest, about 10 years or so of doing news, I wanted to sort of, move into longer form stuff and move more into documentaries, current affairs, stuff like that. And then again, after a number of years, freelance seemed to be the way to go. And then that just enabled me to sort of really pick and choose the things I do. So and I do a lot of op stock. I do some presenter stuff, directing crews and self-shooting. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. But I mean, what about tell me about yourself? Because I say we know each other, which is a bit strange. It feels like we're on a bit of a speed date here, but sort of like we know each other. I know what you do now, but how did you kind of get to where you are?
It's a funny old journey, actually. I've always found it quite fascinating. I've always enjoyed the technology of cameras and the geekery of it more than anything else. But I think that it was probably 25 years ago where I started to take photography more seriously. I think digital had started to really emerge and make a massive difference, and there was a massive shift towards digital as the production and the cost of the equipment started to get cheaper and cheaper. But I flipped out into technology. I went into tech, so I got into tech and software development and all sorts of weird stuff, which actually took me very far away from anything to do with filmmaking. And then it was a strange one because all of a sudden the really good quality cameras were affordable. I mean, I don't mean like everyone could buy them, but they were more affordable. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And I think that I actually got a couple of fantastic breaks with the Knutsford Guardian of all
Wow.
news outlets, where they said, "Look, we need someone who can get us shots quickly." And I think it was quite interesting actually, because I bought one type of camera, then another DSLR, then another DSLR, and then along came the 5D, which blew me away. All of a sudden, I'm now using a full-frame camera. The 5D Mark II came out, and the movie feature was there. And so from using XL1s to do basic movie making, all of a sudden I could get cinematic stuff. And from there on, I really haven't looked back. I've always done bits and bobs with some tech or some investment stuff, but I've always done that. And from there, I've really focused on little compact budget movies for small businesses, lots of community stuff. And that's where I'm at. So now I'm embedded with a couple of companies, and I absolutely love it. Predominantly mental health care, which is just an incredible world. And that's really where I'm at. And I'm still doing sort of still doing quite a lot. Well, did it today. I did some editing remotely today. So yeah, fantastic. So that's it. So that's where it's sort of come from, really.
Yeah. No, I mean, sort of. It's funny because I travel quite a lot. It's funny you travel in this business all the time, don't you? Whether you're taking pictures or whether you're actually filming a documentary. And I always say I did a bit of teaching last year or the year before at Salford on their media course, and I said you've got to be prepared. You've got to be prepared to travel in this job because unfortunately. Generally, sticking a camera out of your window doesn't make a great film, and so you have to kind of go to where it sounds obvious. So go to where the action. I'm doing what I do, obviously. If it's studio based, it's a bit different, but you have to sort of go to where the action is. So I mean, I have been to some amazing places all over the world and done some really crazy, stupid things. Which are great, which are really great fun. But I suppose coming back to what you're saying is that how light and how small everything has become has just changed the game. I mean, it's just absolutely. When I started, I mean, we sound like two old blokes now chatting away, but when I started as an editor, I had those two big silver flight cases, which was two pairs of two editing machines, and you had a player and you had a recorder, and they were like these big 30 kilo silver cases, and you flew with those. Whereas now, I mean, it's your laptop. I mean, that's what you. I mean, I don't edit on the road now because that's a news thing. I always bring rushes. I always bring hand carry rushes back, but everything has got smaller and lighter, and it's sort of changed and cheaper, and it's changed the game. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think just generally the entry to market, that's one of the biggest things that I think has completely changed, because I mean, just general costs. The overall cost of the thing, when I was looking at the 5D Mark II, that was really the trigger point for me to get into the thing. That was about $2,500. Now to get anything close to that cinematic quality back then, you'd be into massive money. I mean, really, tens of thousands of pounds to get close. I mean, I don't even know what the camera timeline was, where the Sony gear was at that time, but to put cinematic filmmaking into the hands of a consumer for not really, for not a fat lot of money, it made a huge difference. And I think that whilst kit has gone smaller, and then people have scaled up, there's actually a falling off. As I've just said to you now, I now go to a lot of places with two smaller mirrorless cameras and all my normal filmmaking gear because it's it's easier, it's lighter. I'm not jumping around everywhere. I'm not having to think, well, I've got to take this piece of kit, then that piece of kit, then this piece of kit, and it's just it's quite a lot actually. It's quite
yeah. And on some of the stuff I do, I mean, op stocks, you turning up in the old days with a big, I mean, no TV company nowadays can afford a crew for an ob stock. The ob stocks, you are camped out with people for days, weeks, months on end, and a proper crew, soundman, whatever, that isn't going to happen. And also turn up with a large amount of kit can be quite off-putting because the name of the game is to sort of become embedded and to become part of the furniture as quickly as you can. And if you've got the big old cameras and all the rest of it, it's just not going to happen. And so it's changed a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think one thing with the sort of stuff I'm working on, we film a lot of clinical staff and non-clinical, but when we have to go and film service users, the everything has to completely change. If I rock up and I've got 3 cameras and 5 or 6 lights and audio and this everywhere, to someone who is suffering from anxiety, who you need to get some sync from, that is not the way to go about approaching it. I mean, it's nice to show the client, check out the amount of kit I've got, but it's not about that. This is actually, you pick the gear that's appropriate to the shoot and make sure the talent or whoever you're talking to can is feeling at ease. Because the second they're not at ease, what you're recording someone who's anxious. Well, that's not filmmaking. What you want is record the feelings, their passion, the reasons why they're telling the story to you in the first place. Yeah. So I get it.
If I could give one sort of totally shameless little plug, I last year or the year before filmed Sunderland Till I Die which is now just gone out on Netflix, and for a lot of that filming, I would be camped out in the stands, because obviously in Sunderland we could film in the stands. We were filming Sunderland, we had their permission and all the rest of it. So I would be in the stands, camera, radio mic on my contributors, and so you're kind of getting that fan's eye experience of of what it's like to be a fan following your football club, and it would just be me, camera, and a microphone, and that's all you needed, and sort of again that sort of doing that probably 15 years ago probably would have been pretty impossible.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to cut to my desktop view now, which actually shows the Sunderland Till I Die thing, which if anyone's out there, actually, I think it's worth. I did actually watch a few episodes. One thing that amazed me was how much how community they are, how incredibly passionate they are. And it's not, you're not talking about the like typical football mentality. I mean, I'm not a football person really, but a real warmth and depth to these people. It was amazing to watch.
I was talking to somebody about it who's not really into football, and I said, actually, it's not really about football. It's about a community. It's about this heart of the community. Obviously, it's about an area of the country that has lost heavy industry, feels like they are they're left behind, and that is their Saturday. And some of the fans, they travel every week away and they do all of that, and that's really what it's about. And so like the fans were kind of absolutely key to it, and I was very lucky because my job was covering fans and covering the owners, and the story of season 2 is the owners, as they struggle to kind of pull the spending back under control. But I was there on transfer deadline day as they're kind of basically playing poker to sort of try and land a strike and stuff like this. And again, it was I was just camped out in the corner of this little office, trying to make myself as unobtrusive as possible, while basically they were sort of sticking another $1 million on the price of a player they were buying, and so it's great. It was good fun.
Excellent. Right, Simon, we've got questions from people. They are coming in thick and fast. So the first one I must read out is: you can't edit on the road unless you've got a Tesla. Well, that's from Matt Raw, by the way. Well, I can attest to the not having to have a Tesla to do editing. I think what you need is something that reasonably speedy, certainly not a Tesla, but interesting.
No, absolutely. But it's saying that I was cutting a little showreel for somebody the other day, or just a little taster tape and all this bit, and I just cut something off iMovie, and it's years since I've been used iMovie. My God, it's impressive now. I mean, it's just basically a stripped back final version of Final Cut Pro, isn't it? And it's pretty good just for banging stuff together pretty quickly.
So are you are you a Final Cut man, or are you a Premiere?
Yeah. I mean, television generally uses Avid. You Avid Media Composer, things like that. That's television, and most television editors will suck their teeth and complain if they're not cutting on Avid. Premiere, from what I can see, still seems to be the kind of the preserve of advertising, photographers, sort of real creatives, stuff like that. And I don't know if that's kind of the Photoshop legacy or whatever it is. But I have worked on Premiere, and I kind of use Final Cut for myself, and I quite like it. But yeah, I mean, generally sort of Final Cut.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll be honest. I've been talking to a friend of mine who I work with, Dan Watts, and he was telling me today that he'd been training himself up on Resolve. Now I know that Philip Bloom had been interested in Resolve and has literally migrated across to doing that. And I have to say that today, having had 3 crashes in Premiere mid-edit, when I've got a client who's desperate to get stuff out for tomorrow morning, it's frustrating. It really is.
Yeah.
And I've considered Final Cut because Final Cut's native to the Mac system.
Yeah, exactly. That's the reason I went with it. I mean, but again, if you, it's a bit boring. But if you get to the purists, they say Final Cut 7 was the one.
Right.
But then obviously Apple stopped supporting that, and that was a professional piece of software. They stopped supporting that, and then they brought out Final Cut X, Final Cut 10, Final Cut Pro 10, and that was much more of an app that you buy on the web, on the App Store for 200 quid, 250 quid, or whatever it is. And and so some purists now sort of again say, well, it's not really professional, or the rest of it, but it is. I find it pretty good. I mean, I'm not an editor. I wouldn't cut. I wouldn't. Luckily, I'm in a position now where I never have to cut full films myself.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, to be honest, is it a choice? Is it a choice for other people? Is it something that?
I think you can. Yeah, I think some people. I think you can choose. I'd say most television editors I know will have a preference for Avid, and most edit houses I know, especially in Manchester and London, for television, will probably be equipped with Avid. I imagine if you go down the advertising corporate route, probably probably goes down more the Premiere route. But
Yeah, I think it's although just to keep everybody aware before this outputs, I'm losing a little bit of the inbound network signal. I don't know whether it's my wonderful EE connection that I've got there, but it's just beginning to slow down a little bit. So I'm just going to see if I can resurrect that. Yeah, it's become very slow. Anyway, I'll press on. So we've got. Let me just shut this down, close that down, close that down. So we've got a couple of questions from more people actually, although it's going to be a little bit difficult until the stream picks up the beat. Another one from Abby Hours. What do you both enjoy most about your work, and how would you recommend someone breaks into the industry? Simon, go for it.
Well, no, you go first.
Right. I like storytelling. For me, it's about storytelling. Yeah. It's about seeing when someone starts talking to you about a project and they're not quite sure. It's okay working with art directors and people and a creative team, because I actually, you don't have to do as much thinking. It's more about the capture. But whereas someone comes to you and says, look, I really want to tell a story about this, that, and how this works. It's like, well, do you know what? That's actually, I can help you with that. We can talk about that. So for me, I do like the production side of it. It's not necessarily the picking up the camera and shooting. I like this angle. There's that. There's what they're saying. There's the scene. There's everything else. But there's also, it's the fact that what I like is I can actually help engineer and tailor and produce something from start to finish. And I think that's the thing that's even if it's a tiny weeny thing, a tiny weeny production. I'm always thinking about how can I make that better? How can I film that coffee bean? Or how can I make that sandwich look incredible? Or am I cutting two things? I mean, that's where I tell you the master of that is the guy who's online. It's Peter McKinnon. If anyone has not seen Peter McKinnon or understand what it is. He has turned B-roll into something that everybody should be getting into. Even if it's with your mobile phone, if you're just taking that, don't think about just filming that person. think about the things that are surrounding. When they say something, capture that and get it. That's the thing that excites me the most, I think. So, what about you, Simon?
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, it's funny because I've never made corporates or commercials, but I always quite fancy it, and I'd like, you know, it's probably never going to happen. I don't know, but sort of, you know, I think a 30-second, 45-second advert is amazing because, you know, you're telling a story in 45 seconds more often than not with no voiceover. So, you know, it really is a very pure kind of form of filmmaking storytelling. But in terms of Abby's question, the great thing about kind of the telly that I make, the kind of generally factual telly, Britain is very good at it. We make a lot of it.
Absolutely.
And I'd say to you, if you fancy it, look and watch as much as you can. Look at the end of the programs and see who made it, because more often than not, it'll be an independent production company. You know, several of them are based in Manchester or Leeds, if not London, and it's becoming a very and maybe it's the small cameras, maybe it's the camera phones, maybe it's all this kind of stuff, but it's becoming quite a meritocratic industry. So if you know, are a young person and you write to these people or phone them up and say, bit of work experience, I saw this program, I love it, I got these ideas. You know, it's an ideas business. If anyone who turns up on the door and says, I've got this idea, this idea, this idea, then all of a sudden you're treated very, very kind of seriously. You know, so actually it's watch a lot, see what you like, work out why you don't like what you don't like, and think about the roles and the jobs that are involved, whether it's filming, whether it's producing, whether it's editing, whether it's being in front of a camera. It's that. But again, any program, whether it's, you know, the kind of stuff that Jonathan does, that's, you know, that is, you know, working, you know, with charities or different corporates or whatever, telling a story in a short form, or even, you know, even Homes Under a Hammer. It's telling a story. It's taking you from one place to the next. So it's working out what that story is and what you can bring to it, really.
Brilliant. Yeah. So Abby, I hope that answers your question. There's a couple of technical questions here. It's like how you're doing this and how do I record two people interviews? It's like, well, if anyone actually knows just how long it's taken to just try to line this up, yeah, we're available for hire. So
yeah, it's been quite it's been good. It's been a learning curve for me because it's sort of like a long time since I've done anything sort of live like this, and sort of but you know, with the magic of Wi-Fi and Skype and various other bits and pieces, we're managing to sort of tie it all together.
No, I think it works. Right, I have another question from Matt Raw. He was talking about, can you edit? Of course, only with autopilot on in your Tesla. But I don't own a Tesla, so I don't. Nor do I have a chauffeur either. I drive myself. Many of the TV interviews he did out of Arrow Park were single camera, sound engineer, maybe a couple of lights. A director elsewhere was literally calling the shots. So how talk me through how that production worked.
You asked me.
Sorry. So it's in the Sunderland I don't. Just how. What's the sort of setup and just give me an overview of the you know how that worked.
Well, we had three shooting teams, and each team had a sort of shooting director like myself, and an assistant producer, we'd call them. And as much as shooting your stuff, so we had one team that was kind of following the players and the players' families. Where I was following owners and the fans, and somebody else was what were they doing? Sort of all other sort of bits and pieces, really. But you have to kind of think not just about obviously, you know, what you're shooting and what it looks like and all the rest of it, but you're actually sort of, you know, making sure that you're following the arc of the story. So kind of in our office we had, you know, all manner of whiteboards dotted around the walls and trying to work out arcs of story. But obstocs are a funny one because no matter what anybody says, you always go into them and say, we're not going to shoot masses of material here. We're going to be quite specific and quite targeted, and we're going to work out, what we. And of course, within weeks or days, that just goes out the window. You end up shooting everything, and then in the edit, they manage to sift through these kind of hundreds of hours of material and try and sort of work out what a story is. Because unfortunately, it works like that because, it never, real life never runs smoothly, and so you never quite know which one's going to go.
Yeah.
But so quite a decent back office team. There was probably in Sunderland, there was probably about 9 or 10 of us in Sunderland, but actually ever shooting, it was just me and my assistant, and we would have a couple of panel lights, camera, simple kind of FS7, three lenses or so. What I did use quite a lot, which I haven't got, which would be nice. It'd be nice to have. Is I had those. I don't know if if whoever's asked that question. We had those flexible panel lights. The flexi light. And the benefit of those is they weigh nothing, so you can just stick them to a roof inside a car or wherever you go. Whatever you go, because if you watch Ops Docs or watch any Ops Docs, you can either have the sitting in a chair like we are and people then talking about what's happened, or you can try and get it in actuality as they're doing things. And cars there's a little kind of secret in a way. Cars are always brilliant because the person you're interviewing is half of them, or hopefully more than half of them, is concentrating on driving and they're trapped. So you can be filming them and you can pretty much ask them anything you like, unless they say to you, stop now, I'm not going to answer that. They have to keep going with you. So you see a lot of, and traveling with people to places is always nice. It just gives you that feeling of, you're moving, you're going somewhere.
Yeah, road trip.
And so we did a lot of that. And I say just a little flexi panel light stuck on. It's usually whenever you watch a drama and you see people in a car and they're kind of quite well lit, there's a little light usually on the dashboard that's just sort of shining into their face.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So, yeah.
Actually, on kit film, just to geek out on kit, there is they do little tiny MCs. I don't know if you've seen the little aperture MCs, but that's really good to just mount somewhere. It's even got a magnetic thing. Yeah. You just clump it onto.
Oh, they are amazing. Yeah,
incredible, and it's good for that little bit of fill light if you need it.
Yeah.
So what else have we got here? I've got Paul Langley asking, how does Oon write music to one of our projects? Well, that's something you need to. Well, I don't know. Just it's a good question. I don't know. I need to talk to the client.
When you on your stuff for music, do you use commercial? Do you just use a library, or what do you do?
Ordinarily, I've subscribed to Epidemic. So if you've not tried Epidemic Sound, it's a really quite a useful a subscription service, and I've been using it for quite some time. So I started out with a basic YouTube account just to get some traction with it, just to try it out, because you can get it for 10 quid a month, as long as you're not using it commercially. You get a good you get a good value out of it. And just to try your hand at different projects and things, which is perfect. I'm actually going to cut to the desktop view now so people can actually see what it is. So basically, there are literally thousands and thousands of different types of sounds, from background sounds, from or ambient sounds to actual core tracks, and that allows you to just download them. You can drop them into your timeline, and you can do anything you like with it. I've gone now for the more commercial version because I actually need to use things more commercially. So I pay 40 something quid a month, and I can use any of those commercially, so long as it's not in a distribution model. So if I'm doing in like an advert that's going to get millions of views, you have to get a different license for that.
Yeah.
If you're doing something that's going to be embedded in a game or embedded in a video that's on an app, you have to get a license for that as well. But if you're just doing stuff directly with commercial, you can push that out, and it's fine, and it's 40 odd quid a month. There are loads of others, but
Yeah.
I like Epidemic. It gives me lots of different streams. If I just want the bass of something, or if I want the drums of something, and then I can actually manipulate the sound myself into to a soundtrack, then it works for that. And it's it's good. So that's what I use. Actually, if anyone wants to, use Epidemic, it's worth signing up to. It isn't too expensive. There's lots of different things you can do with it. Definitely. And you, what do you do? Do you like?
Well, it really depends on who I'm making a program for. You find that BBC and other broadcasters often have a blanket agreement with pretty much all of the kind of commercial labels. So if you watch a BBC program, you'll often find some very kind of recent commercial music you can use. I'm working at the moment on a project, on a big series for Discovery, and they're a bit different partly because it goes all around the world and it's out there for a long time. They generally have a bank of music libraries that we want to use. But again, a bit like cameras, really, music libraries now are just amazing. Like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they sounded like some bloke in his bedroom, a spare bedroom with a kind of bomb. Now, you've got Hans Zimmer making tracks for music libraries and stuff like that. So you've got some amazing stuff out there. But again, like you said, Jonathan, it's all about is it for commercial use? Is it for worldwide? Is it in perpetuity and all this kind of stuff? And all that kind of stuff has to be. Luckily for television, I have a kind of somebody that looks after the back end of all of that. But you've got to make sure, because again, these are creatives and they've made this piece of music, and if it gets used, they should receive some payment for it. But there's no doubt about it that you watch a program and the music, just sets the tone and the feel and the drama and the jeopardy and all of that kind of stuff. It's just so important.
Sam, just a quick one. I've got another question about. Are you using an FX7 Mark II or an FX7?
Mark II.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. FS7 Mark II.
7. Right. Only because I've got a question here from Duffy Belfield. I think he's still out in Australia.
Wow.
So I'm
good day, Duffy.
Good day, Cobber. That's terrible, actually. I'll stop with the accents. It's just absolutely awful. Let me just cut back to a you and me view. That's a bit better there. Then I'm looking less embarrassing on my own. Right. So Duffy, I am currently using an EOS R. So I'm actually using 2 EOS Rs. So I've got one EOS R, which is this one here. And then I also have a second EOS R down here, and I was hoping for a wider angle. If I open that up, you can see that's quite wide. So I've got one camera here, which is this one, which both EOS Rs, and it's quite cool. Whereas Simon is using a broadcast camera because he's more of a professional than I am, and has pulled out the big guns.
I'm sure. It's a funny thing, though, isn't it, Jonathan? You've got a effectively a stills camera that takes video, but it's full frame. Yeah. And I've got a so-called broadcast television camera, which is only got a 35mm sensor, and one of the big differences is the depth of field and the film look that it gives you, and your stills camera, it trumps film. My film camera.
Did you have to say the Trump word there? That really, I'm struggling there with that word. Anyway, no politics or religion, people.
But what Duffy was asking about, whether it was Mark 1 or Mark 2.
Well, no, I just wanted to know, because I'm gonna pull that up on the desktop view. So Duffy, that is Simon's camera, and Simon uses that one. That is pretty much de facto industry standard piece of kit. Yeah. It is used all over the world. They have sold millions, well, maybe over 1 million cameras. It is.
I think I read somewhere they reckon it's the most successful single camera ever, or Sony's most successful camera. And I think they've just got it. It gives everybody in television anyway what they need, and it's cheap. And it gives I still think that their colour science is getting better. The FX9, it's improved, and I think dare I say Canon's colour science was better earlier than Sony's. And I think the legacy thing that Sony always made studio television cameras, and they were quite sort of wedded to that kind of color science. And then slowly they've sort of realized that they need to change slightly. And I think it's seeing it. I think it's getting better now, the FX9. But I mean, I still think sometimes, straight out of the camera, straight out of the camera, rather than a picture, an image that you grade straight out of the camera. This camera can look a bit like video, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, I've seen the Cinetone on the FX9, and that stopped me in my tracks. I mean, originally, before all of this happened, before we were COVIDified, I've just made that up. Before that happened, I was close to the C500 Mark II, which is quite a beast. But then I started to see all of this wonderful footage and great stuff coming out of this the FX9, thinking, is this where I should go? Actually, what I don't want to do is go too heavily into the geekification of that, because we're going to lose viewers. They're just going to disappear. Right, so Chris, I hope that answers your question, and it's nice to hear from you, man. Rachel Bishop says Simon for the next James Bond. How do you feel about that role? Answers on a postcard.
I'm not quite sure what that means.
Yeah, I'll give up on that. Right, James Wilson. James Wilson is a friend of mine, and also former bastion of Knutsford News at.
I know James.
James. Simon touched on iMovie, but what is the best editing software for a new starter? I mean, if you don't want to spend any money, download DaVinci Resolve, because that's free, and it's pretty heavyweight, but it's free, and the resources, the community online is unbelievable. You can learn everything there is to know about DaVinci Resolve and start cranking things out really quickly. If that would be the first thing I would suggest to go and actually have a look at that. Have you got any other suggestions, Simon?
Well, I suppose the only thing is I suppose it depends what James is filming with and what he's doing. If he just wants to, shoot a few little clips, top and tail those, and I don't knock it, shooting things off an iPhone. I've done it, and it's, and if he wants to do that, then iMovie. And so the thing I like about iMovie is if you learn that and then go up to Final Cut, it's just a continuation, because the architecture is all the same. But if you really want to kind of spread your creative wings, then yeah, something like DaVinci or one of the other big hitters. But I suppose it depends what you want to do. If you just want to make some very simple online content for local paper or something like that, then any iMovie or DaVinci or anything would be fine.
So James, if you're still watching and we haven't bored you to death with the bit of camera geekery there, we've just let us know what it is you're acquiring, what it is you're shooting on, and then we can sort of like fill in some blanks there. Who else have we got here? Right, Dan Watts is a friend of mine, filmmaker. What's the best tips for getting documentary ideas commissioned by broadcasters? Is it about creating taster tapes?
That's a really good question. And I still, although I've been in this business for feel like quite a long time, I still don't think I necessarily know the answer, because there are times when you pitch ideas and you kind of you're met with a lukewarm response, and then you find out that 6 months down the line something remarkably similar has been commissioned. And I just think it's it's just right place, right time, keep plugging away. It's just working out what I suppose what the zeitgeist is. It's just it's all that kind of thing. I suppose I think a taste tape is good. A taste tape is good is if especially if the access is quite tricky, and then you can show a tasty tape, then that will show whoever you're pitching to that you're really on the inside. And so I think a taste tape is pretty good. I mean, I think again it's the old if you can do an elevator pitch on it and pitch an idea in 3 sentences, people go, "Oh, that's interesting." Then you're onto something. You know, if it takes 2 pages of A4 to explain your story, then it's probably not quite so interesting.
Yeah.
But it's and television, broadcast television, is a funny beast, because, you know, the commissioners, the execs, the kind of controllers, you know, they will talk as if they are kind of, you know, amazing sort of people that can, you know, that sort of turn anything into kind of, you know, they have that vision. But I honestly believe that a lot of people don't know what they like until they see it. You know, they're very good at saying, no, I don't think so. That's right, last year and this year. But then if they see something, that's amazing, and then you'll see a slew of programs that follow in the same sort of in the same vein. But yeah, I mean, I mean, especially I suppose with a documentary, if you're following 1 or 2 characters, if you can show people how interesting and engaging those characters are through a taster, then that's a pretty good way to go.
That's good. It's a good response. I hope, Dan, I hope that answers your question. I think it's quite difficult. A lot of people do know commissioning editors, or can say this, or they can get them in, but I think it does feel very much like what direction the wind is blowing in sometimes, and there's no real formula to how it should be. But from what I'm seeing, from what I'm listening to, and from people, because you do see like a sort of like a not wanting to use the word virus because it's just not really the right time for that. But you do see this rash. Nope, wrong. There's lots of very similar things do appear, and I think it's the same in the film industry as well. You do see one film, then another film, and it's all very similar.
Oh, yeah.
Unless, of course, you're Marvel, which is, you know, and then it becomes a different thing.
It's, yeah.
So I hope that answers your question, Dan. Any more, just fire them over. Right. Now, there's a chap here, Dominic Halpin. He is a fantastic musician. I've even played with him at the Cinnamon Club, and he's a very interesting guy. Dominic Halpin and the Honeybees, available for bookings. That's not just a free plug for you. If you've not seen Dominic, then it's well worth watching. Okay, free promo over. As more people, his question is, as more people are viewing on phones and laptops, where do you think the future of cameras is heading?
Wow. Great question.
It is.
And great question. And, you know, gosh, in the current climate, things could be changing, you know, in all sorts of ways. You know, having a reporter going off and filming some shots, an editor back in his house cutting them, you know, things are changing. I hope, as far as I'm concerned, that once we get past the current sort of crisis we're in, people will want things back in a kind of better quality than kind of down the end of the line or whatever. But I think there'll always be a place for fairly decent cameras. You can plug in microphones and, you know, change lenses and do stuff like that. But saying that, you know, there was a film. I think it was Tangerine. Was it last 2, 3, 4 years ago that won an Oscar? That was filmed on an iPhone. So, you know, go and check that out. So again, I honestly believe if you've got the story to tell, then actually that's probably the most important thing.
I'll go with that. I mean, it's always nice to have lovely gear, and you can always see things, but ultimately, it's like a notepad and pen. You know, if you've got a notepad and pen to write something down, you'll do that. But if you had a quill and lovely inks, you'd do that as well. But it's horses for courses, I think. I think it's either Bentley or Rolls-Royce. I know probably Rachel, who may or may not be still watching. There was a commercial, but it was only, I never really saw it anywhere else, but it was a commercial shot on iPhones and iPads, edited on iPads and shot on iPhones. I mean, the rigging they had for this stuff was insane. And they were using pretty tasty apps as well to record it. But it's the fact they were able to do a near broadcast quality advert using just mobile and portable technology and battery backup as the core was amazing. So, Dominic, I think that sort of kind of answers your question. It's more like, I think that people will always want quality, and you certainly wouldn't go and pay top dollar at a cinema to go and watch a film that's been shot on an iPhone when it's that big. I think you're going to miss a lot of the quality from that. You know, when you're using these big sensors and big cameras that have got incredible amounts of latitude for light in them, you would probably end up getting a bit naffed off, having spent like 12 quid on a ticket, and you're not getting that quality. But yeah, I think choose the gear for the application as well. Perhaps maybe worth doing that. Right, I've got James Wilson has come back to us. It's just for it was talking. His original question was, what's the best editing software for new starters? So he uses just a SLR, just DSLR and an iPhone. So it's a question of pulling those two bits together. So your suggestion of iMovie would make sense. I don't know whether James. I'm sure you'll mention in the comments what computer you're using to edit, but if you can let us know, then we can probably advise. But there definitely some of the like DaVinci with some stiff learning would help you, or iMovie if you're on a Mac, because it's so simple and you can get it's changed enormously. Originally it was just linear. It's just one line. Now you can actually add different things and different layers. So it has changed hugely, and it is impressive. Actually, it really is impressive. So I hope that helps, James. I'm sure there's more to. I'm sure there'll be more to come. Right, I'm just scrolling through the very short list of questions we've got. We haven't got many here, but we've been going for 46 minutes, Simon, which isn't bad.
That's amazing. We haven't fallen off the air yet.
No.
Well, I think people are watching. You never know.
Yeah, we've got about 3 viewers. No, I'm kidding. No, we've got a few viewers. Well, the thing is, people can watch this back, you see, because although it's streaming out of here, it is going straight out to, it's going straight out to their storage. So we'll have it. I was actually just saying that Katie Rickett, who you probably know.
Yeah, of course.
Katie is an Avid editor. She uses Avid. But she's on the fly. But I don't know if you noticed, she was using a GH5 the other day. So originally she had a normal camera, but now I spotted with the GH5 as her sort of like in a grab bag, which I have to say, I just happen to have one here.
Wow.
So, and I was going to use this earlier. By the way, if anyone hasn't seen it, this is a very, very simple camera. It is, but it's incredibly powerful. It's a micro four thirds, so it's not a full frame sensor. It's not anything else, but it's a very compact thing. You can get these used for really good value. And if you're looking at entry level filmmaking, where you just want where you're looking for something that's going to at least get you where you need to get to and understand lighting and the basics of filming, the GH5 is without doubt an absolute killer when the autofocus kicks in. It's amazing. It's much smaller than a normal DSLR. It has a fantastic digital viewfinder, a full HD, and it's broadcast ready. Actually, it is broadcast ready because it will do 422 at 10-bit, and as Simon will tell you, that is quite important if you're going out and capturing packages for news or any other news gathering stuff as well.
Yeah. But I feel quite fortunate because I generally worked in national network news out of London, whereas the local news people like Katie, they really do earn their stripes and earn their money because they go out, they usually film their own package, they then voice it, cut it, then turn it around and do a live chat back to the studio as well, and it's sort of and then drive 200 miles into the next place. So they really they do.
I've seen we used to live quite close to Katie, and she would regularly be out. So I'm going to a different camera angle just to mix it up a bit. She would be up and out at 4 a.m. to drive to Sunderland, or she's not slept because she's gone from one job to another on the bounce and got a couple of hours and then off she goes. There's something interesting about the cut and thrust of that kind of media, and it is exciting. And even though it's only like low level, working in localized and regional media, it is actually there is an excitement when there's a job on. And that's the thing that gets you through your tiredness, or gets you through onto the next job, because you're in a different, your brain is different.
Yeah, and for me, when I was doing it, and the thing I found is news generally, it's always a bit of a compromise. It's never as good. You never make it. It never looks as good as you want it to, or whatever, because you're always up against that deadline to deliver. The one thing you cannot do is miss your deadline, and so you'd cut your package, and you'd be filing it from wherever you were in the world or in the country, and you'd be filing it back. And I used to do that with people like Jeremy Bowen and Kate Adie and stuff like that, and they'd be on your shoulder and sort of, it wouldn't be too good if you didn't sort of make your slot. But the great thing about news is, no matter, at the end of the day, you have a beer, you kick back, and then tomorrow the day starts
all
fresh
over again.
Whereas in kind of documentaries, sometimes these it can live with you for sort of 6 months, and it's sort of like then there's a different kind of stress and a different kind of sort of tiredness can kick in. So there is definitely something, if you're a bit of a if you are a bit of an adrenaline junkie, then news is quite good fun. If you are herring, I mean, you're just herring off here, there, and everywhere, and sort of to be first is to be first to the story is pretty important.
Yeah, well, I think because most of the stuff I've done is stills with press work. I've done very little, I've done very little filmmaking press work, and it always amazes me. There was a very certain type of person stood next to that camera when it's absolutely lashing down around them. You can see they look tired. They're quite wasted, and you've got the presenters looking razor sharp, but the guys are always slightly rough and ready, and tea with cigarettes. Where's the cigarette? Get some facts. But it's an interesting. There's some romance about that. I think it is quite interesting.
Oh yeah. No, it's a funny business. It really is. I mean, sort of like I don't do it so much now, but I've done a few sort of war zones and stuff like that. Wow. And you're kind of you're up against it, and you're in some pretty nasty places. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the day or the end of the week, the whole of the world's media meets again in the bar of the hotel, and you kind of share your stories. And it's a bit crazy. You're thinking, hang on a minute, we shouldn't be doing this, but then you're there just having a beer with somebody from CNN or whatever, and it's good fun. I'm quite pleased in a way I've left it behind, but sort of like for 10 years, so it was really good fun. Excellent,
that's really good. It's a nice little insight. Right, okay, I've got a couple more here. Guy Cullen. Having bought Final Cut Pro X, is it worth looking at plugins or just stick with the base library? Struggling with color grading. Big question, that one.
Gosh.
Struggling with color grading. I understand working with the best raw content is preferable, but trying to salvage footage that's already shot. It depends on when you say shot. You're overexposed, underexposed, bad white balancing, bad audio. Guy, we could just do with a bit more information, but...
Also, I wonder whether he's talking about stuff that's shot. If it's shot with a LUT burnt in or something like that, then obviously you've got less latitude to play with the image than if you shoot something flat in log, and then you can sort of manipulate in all sorts of ways. And that's a common problem. I think again it sounds a little bit geekery, but a lot of people might not realise that what people think is a video camera is in effect a digital film camera, and so what often comes out of that image is a very what we call a flat image, and then it's manipulated in post-production to change the colours and do all sorts of bits and pieces. But if you can shoot in other settings, and it comes out already looking very much as the image you saw, but then you've got very little opportunity to change your pictures. And I wonder if that's what is it Matt?
It's Guy Cullen.
Hey Guy, I wonder if that's what Guy was saying. I mean, I haven't done too much colour grading, I'll be absolutely honest. I generally leave that to other people. But I do hear that Final Cut is getting better and better in its colour grading kind of abilities. I've got a few. I bought a few. Gosh, I can't remember what they're called now. I bought a few plugins, a few transitions and bits and pieces. But I do find that they're great fun and all the rest of it. But I do find that Final Cut for me seems to have got more than enough of what you need. But there are some plugins that, and I think if you really get into these software, you can do it all yourself. But the great thing about a plugin is somebody's done the work for you, and you can just boom put that kind of adjustment layer on top of your timeline, and it does it for you. But if you want to really learn the nuts and bolts of these things, you can do most of these things yourself.
Oh, right, interesting. So I've never used Final Cut before. So can you put? I didn't realize there was an adjustment layer function that you put over in Final Cut. Interesting.
Yeah,
because one thing I rely upon heavily in Premiere is to use that adjustment layer. And just for anyone who's watching, it's just to try and explain it. When you have a piece of footage in your timeline and you want to change the light or change things inside, it's become quite destructive if you just edit and change everything. So what you do is you set an adjustment layer above it, and that talks to that layer below and allows you to get sort of non-destructively change and tweak the parameters inside that clip. So it's a lot easier to do it. But I didn't know I didn't know it was feasible. Just shows you how long it is since I've used.
But I mean, I don't do. Don't do too much grading, color correction and grading and stuff like that. But from what I've seen and what I read, each time Final Cut is kind of upgraded, re-released, an update, it seems like the color grading is one of the things that's getting better and better.
Right.
But but we're into quite detailed stuff.
Yeah, it was a bit. Sorry about that. Sorry, viewers. Sorry.
No.
But that's interesting. Right. What else? Yeah. So Guy is using Cinelog. Audio is independent recorded, video primarily, sunlight not constant. Well, sunlight is a ball ache, because if you're trying to, unless you're doing sort of like, well, sunlight's always going to be a pain in the arse. You're really going to struggle if something's burning out or there's something you're trying to balance for, because the color. It depends what the sunlight's reflecting on. There's so many parameters to trying to work out what sunlight is. You can pull out highlights from the sunlight, but it depends on how much, how many stops of you've got in that footage. If you've only got like one or two stops because of the quality you acquire it isn't great, you're not going to be able to get that latitude of to try and pull, to try and recover things. Like Ari, for instance, is famous for being able to get an overexposed shot and drawing it right back to something that's usable. So you're shooting in Cinelog. I think you've got to plan your shots out a little bit more effectively. Try and get to where you've got a constant state of light, or a light you can control out. Sunlight's always going to be a ball, always. Either a scrim overhead or scrim in front. But if it's coming in and out, say for instance it's a cloudy day and you've got sunlight coming in and coming out, that's just a nightmare, because then you try and unless you put the camera into like a full auto mode, and then it just jumps around. You lose a lot of the, you like auto iris or something. But even then, you're going to lose your style the way you're doing it. So anyway, I hope that would be. What do you have any comments on that?
No, not really. I mean, I suppose it depends what kind of stuff you're shooting. If you're shooting a drama or a feature film, you've got to be in control of your environment, and that's why any drama, it might look like it's shot in a house with a window, but it's probably a studio. And if it is a real house, it's probably got some massive lamps outside, which are kind of doubling up as the sun, because no one can guarantee the sun's going to be in or out or whatever. For what I do. Generally, we can live with something, coming in and out, because it's documentary, it's real life. But yeah, I mean, sort of doing a big interview outside with the sun, you'd probably try and stay away from that. And shooting your classic, your classic kind of in a room. Just the obvious. Don't shoot people with a window behind. If you don't want that window to be burnt out, then if you want to expose that window, then the person's going to be probably pretty dark. And again, I don't know whether I'm sure the person that asked that question knows, but sort of like probably other people that maybe don't, follow television as much. It's most time you see a window. Most time you see a window in a drama or more, not a drama perhaps, but maybe sort of documentary or whatever. That window has probably been heavily ND'd down, and basically neutral density, and that's kind of what we call kind of like sunglasses for your camera, for your lens, and it puts a dark film over, and so it makes windows look. If you look at the classic example is something like This Morning. If you look at This Morning, where you remember they're sitting at that big window and there's real life going on behind them. If you walk past that studio, you can't see in because the windows are pitch black. But actually, that's so that the camera can see the light that's going on outside, and you can still see the presenters, and it's not burnt out. And it sounds like that's a typical problem that unless you take those things into account, you can't really pull back with any amount of post, really.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid bit of advice there, actually, Guy. I hope that's of some use to you. But yeah, okay. It looks like there's a sort of like a quirky hookup going here with two guys that sort of know each other, which is good. Well, we have been going for an hour, Simon. I think we've done all right, actually. I'm hoping that people have enjoyed it, have got something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been good fun, and anyone who's watching, if they've stayed to the end, then absolutely, you deserve a drink. But sort of I think Jonathan and I kind of talked about this and said actually it'd be good to do something, but also good for us to sort of try and certainly me, I've never done anything like this before, to sort of do this has been good for us. So hopefully, and if people if want to do it again, if people want to sort of ask questions to Jonathan or whatever, then certainly we can sort of have themes or ideas for other other conversations.
Well, I've just
I'm certainly. I was going to say I know Alistair Chapman. You know what I mean. If you want nuts and bolts about kind of how the FS7 works, he is the man to go to, and there are other people out there as well. But but in terms of everyday use, I think I know enough.
Yeah, I think, and I also think this is it. We can. I like the ability we could tailor things to people, but this is a conversation we can have and figure it out. I mean, obviously, I'm sure the comments will probably keep flowing after the this broadcast has ended, but generally I think it's well, we're getting lots of thanks here. It's really nice. So yeah, brilliant. So
cool.
If anyone else wants any more, just hit us up with some suggestions, and we can tailor another show.
You know what, Jonathan? What might be a nice idea is if people want to, if they want to, I don't know how we do this, and I'll leave it to you. But if people want to, if they want to send any clips or whatever to you, then we can kind of have a look at them, and we can maybe talk about them. We can talk about them live or something like that. Or if you've got any clips of stuff you want to show, likewise. If I find spinning in clips live is quite tricky. But if with a bit of preparation, we probably can do something.
Yeah, I can't load motion with the A10, but I can certainly. That's a Blackmagic A10 Mini. If anyone's interested in what I'm using to actually capture and alter the things, and it's called OBS, which is free software. It's worth looking at. So OBS for your broadcast tool, and the A10 Mini for your camera capture and output. But yeah, I think that it's worth doing. So I can actually upload them to an external laptop, and I can actually pull them in, so we can play different files. So yeah, we can critique things, or anyone got a Q&A. I've tried to do this. It's an interesting one here. Have a show on lens, and Matt's actually asking about lenses. So lenses that's a whole different beast altogether. Yeah. I mean that is a monster. I mean, just to give you, I'm not going to go into it because it may be worth doing. We can save that. But this is a bad boy. This is absolutely outstanding. When it gets into focus, that is, if it ever focuses, which it probably isn't. Thank you very much for not.
So what is that then?
Hang on a minute. I know why. Matt complained about the focus, so I switched the autofocus off. That is an 85mm,
right,
1.4 IS, and that is. I mean, Dan and I have used this on numerous shoots. And actually, I tell you what prompted me to get this lens. It was the Manchester City documentary, which actually Dan worked on, I think, on one or two of the scenes.
Oh, interesting.
And how they shot it. They had lots of the interviews a very high angle on one side, and then a nice wide but quite a long angle. But they had but they were using something that was quite punched in high up and overhead. So it's getting sort of like more like that look as they were talking, and it actually felt quite intimate, and that's the reason why I bought that lens. So yeah, Matt, let me consider that one. We'll think about that one because different things.
Yeah, I mean, very briefly, again, it's horses for courses. It's what you need it to do. I use more zoom lenses, and with zoom lenses you have to give way on the speed. The quality isn't as good unless you're spending the big bucks, but actually to have a 24 to 105 gives you a nice range. Whereas, I've worked on plenty of shows where we've said, let's shoot these on primes, and they look beautiful. Prime lenses, what we call television and film. Prime lenses are your fixed lenses, typically at 24, 35, 50, 85, something like that, and they look beautiful, no doubt about it. But you're changing lenses forever, and then after a while that becomes a bit of here we go, lens change. So it's horses for courses, but for Jonathan's sort of stuff, with you. But also getting beautiful, kind of beautifully shot interviews and shooting some stills as well. Something like a 1.4 is amazing.
Oh, it's still. I mean, that's a beautiful lens. I think I think we did a shoot. That Dan and I did a shoot down in London, and I must have changed lenses on one shoot about 7 times, backwards and forwards. Change this, change that, change this, because as you're seeing the shot evolve, the photographer can't leave the cinematographer's head alone, and whilst you're trying to think about composition and lighting, and Dan was actually I was doing most of the cinematography while Dan was directing, which is great because you can flick in and out of different roles, and we'll try a bit, he'll try a bit, and there's no one thing I've learned with doco stuff. There's no egos. It's all about the story. No. It's all about the narrative.
True.
And you just focus on that.
But also with doco stuff that I do, people I film with, none of them are actors. So you don't want to kind of break that moment, break that mood. Hang on a minute, I'm going to change a lens here. Just hold that thought and let's have that again in a moment. So you have to kind of go into it thinking, right, what is going to allow me to be as inobtrusive as possible and allow this scene to sort of play out. Obviously, you can change the lens if you all of a sudden go, oh crikey, I'm on my zoom, I'm on a long lens here, and I need to get in closer and I need a wide. You can change lenses, of course you can, but sort of you don't want to break that flow wherever possible.
I think it's very interesting. Right, okay, we've ambled on very quickly. We've limped over another 7 minutes of cameraness. So right, leave comments if you can in the live feeds in the chat section. Talk to us about what you want to do. I'm sure Simon and I would be more than happy to do another session. We talk because basically we're not going anywhere.
No.
So anything from whether it's you want to start a podcast or whether you want to just anything that's content and media related, that's either visual, auditory, or visual auditory, just talk to us because we'd be interested in answering any questions at all. So I've been Jonathan. That's been Simon. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thanks a lot, guys. See ya.